y'all. This is Jeremiah from the Bigfoot Society Podcast, and coming at you today, I have some anonymous Bigfoot reports to share. This is volume number 2. I've got a few emails to go through with you. See what you think. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. And if you have your own Bigfoot encounter to share, you can head over to bigfootsocietypodcast.com. There's a share your Bigfoot encounter form. Fill it out the most detailed you can. Let me know if this is anonymous or what name you want associated with it. And I'll share those on YouTube. And also this will be going into the podcast as well. Let's get into it here. First email says, we moved out to the ranch in Central California, late 68 or early 69. We had no neighbors for miles. Our house was on a hillside overlooking the cattle pasture. On the other side of the fence was the Salinas River that flowed into the ocean. Miles from us, from the house on the yard, you had a good view of the river. It was just awesome for a 13 or 14-year-old girl that loved outdoors on all animals. As a shock, what was out there lived out there too. One evening, we was headed to town with my parents, and holy moly, Dad came to a complete stop. Right in front of us ran a white Bigfoot. At the time, I was like, what's that? And Dad said, it's a hunter. And I said, no, that's not a hunter in white fur at night, and it doesn't have a gun with it. It kneeled or squared down behind a bush, maybe 30 feet off the dirt road, hands up to its face and covering its face, but not open, half bent like, maybe with its head looking down. My dad tried shutting me up. I wanted to see more. My little brother remembers that sighting. My father was a believer in Patty, but years later, I think he had to know. Like when he put in a garden with a 6-foot-high fencing, planted more on the outside than on the inside. That's clever. We never seen one thing from that garden. Now, the next 2 incidents, I'm not sure which came first. Before sunup, but you could still see. Walking to the back pasture with 3 dogs, I could see something white moving around a little embankment. Didn't appear very big until it stood up and jumped that fence. Cleared that cattle fence, ran hitting the bushes on branches, screaming or something, out of sight. And dogs came back running scared. It didn't bother my horse one bit. She wasn't scared of this maybe 6.5-foot thing that wasn't too far from her. Odd, right? We got out of the back pasture fast, and I had my bridle in hand. Nope. Didn't stick around for my saddle. I'm thinking it was the 3rd time riding my horse, taking a shortcut home. On a small trail, bushes and trees are not too far from the river, but steep coming down the hill. Just before it flattens out to my right, loud crashing coming right at me. And I think my horse just stopped. It's almost dark. It ran maybe 6 feet ahead of us. Same thing by the time it turned around. It was already kneeling down and hands up to its face. And now I'm a bit scared because I'm off down in there. Nobody would find me. So I turned my horse around and we went up as slowly as we came down. And once again, she didn't mind it at all. Up to this day, I wish I could have seen its face. Not even that close. Just fur. Pointed head and a stocky body. No long hair. Fur maybe at the most 3 inches long. Some shorter. I knew never to say a word about this to anyone. I didn't want it hunted. At the time, I didn't even know what it was. I think maybe it was a teenager Bigfoot reaching out. Another time, looking out our dining room window, I called my mom to look at an old man fishing in the river. I said, he must be old. Look, he has white hair. He would bend down and back up again a few hours later, still there. And there was fish that wasn't good eating, I heard, that run once a year. Years later, I thought, wow, that must have been that. I've had rocks thrown close to me. Thought someone was being sneaky, chopping a tree 2 or 3 chops at a time. That's interesting, too. All the yelling, my father would say, oh, that's a drunk down there with a bullhorn. It was that loud. Who's going to walk that far to do that? From down at the corral, I could hear some kind of talking. Another time in the middle of the pasture was a huge stump. Went back in and had my dad look. When he came out later, he said, "I know you didn't move that by yourself." And I looked, and it was no longer there. It was reddish brown, just rolling hills, some a bit steep. Where they hid and lived must have traveled far to hang out there. Wish I could tell you more about the white Bigfoot, but that's all I seen. It did seem like the thigh and lower leg was similar in size. I wish I knew all I could know now about Bigfoot. I would have showed kindness somehow. Anyways, a bit, if boring, I know. Change anything on this, it's a bit long also. And that's anonymous from Facebook from out in California. And that happened, I believe it was said back in the 60s or 70s. There's a lot to unpack in that one. The cool things, obviously, the white Bigfoot is pretty wild. But there's a few things that a person says that are gone over pretty quick that say a lot. The one being rocks thrown at the person, someone being sneaky, chopping a tree, 2 or 3 chops. I'm thinking that's probably wooden axe. All the yelling that her father would say was a drunk down with a bullhorn. We know that's probably an actual Bigfoot making howls. It's just wild, right? It's absolutely wild. And I'm sure there's more of a story there, but it's been a long time for the person. And I'm just glad that person shared. They were brave enough to share, we could say, so that other people can also share what happened to them. Let's head on to the next one. This next one comes from Ben in Oregon. I was hunting deer on Mammy Corporation ground back in 2017 and was walking back to the truck on a logging road and saw an around 7.5 foot tall, black hair covered creature on 2 feet move very quickly and agile across the logging road. Had no smell and was very fluent going across the road. Seems like it didn't care I was there. And it ran between me and the truck, roughly 100 feet from me, if not closer. My friend's dog was in the back of the truck, and looking at the creature, did not make a single noise, like the dog knew not to make a noise. And I looked in the forest where the creature went in, and there was no noise, and it was dead quiet. That's just crazy. And that's the one thing that the gentleman has seen. It's just wild. It's crazy that the dog knew it's time to be quiet, and the whole forest knows it's time to be quiet. That kind of stuff would wig you out, dude. I don't know. On Bigfoot Society, we had an episode a few back where I talked to a trucker on the Kenai Peninsula. This is a report from another trucker. This is from Daniel. Only this is on the opposite side of the U.S. So here we go. Before I even tell my story, I never believed in this type of stuff. I'm a truck driver. When I made some deliveries in Massachusetts, I can't remember the town in the mountains, because I just didn't care about those crazy people at the time. I'm laughing because I grew up in the mountains of Massachusetts, so I know what he's talking about. He's definitely talking about Western Massachusetts. What I mean by crazy is people talking about Bigfoots openly in public, as it was a casual thing. Truck drivers have to take a 32-hour reset during a 70-hour work week. And during my 30-hour reset in the town, there are signs posted up warning people that it is against the law to shoot down Bigfoots. I went to this bar in the town and ate there. I couldn't wrap my head around these Bigfoot warning signs. So I asked the bartender, "What's the deal with these Bigfoot signs?" She replied, "Yes, they're everywhere here." I literally rolled my eyes and told her, "Seriously, why is it against the law for something that doesn't exist?" She replied, They are real. The guy next to me told me he saw them as well. And I went to this mom and pop truck station across from the bar and asked the cashier about those Bigfoot signs, and he said the same thing that the lady's saying. All I can think of is that these people are nuts, and my 30-hour reset needs to speed up before I become a victim in some situation. But a year later, while driving in Arizona on the 87, I decided to pull over to take a 30-minute lunch break. Now, the 87 is a back road highway. Lots of dirt because it's a desert, but it still has trees and bushes around considering I'm in a forest territory. When I take the back roads on the 87, it's perfect to pull over to take a lunch and enjoy the scenery. The only at normal time I had while taking a lunch here is seeing a dead bulldog next to a tree. Wow. However, as I was eating my lunch while taking a bite out of my sandwich, I saw a Bigfoot that came right out of this big bush, but when it saw me, it automatically turned around and went back into the bush. This bush is a big bush, but not bigger than the Bigfoot that I just witnessed. And this is the thing that got me. How can something that wide and muscular be able to fit and hide into that bush? And it moves so fast while being in stealth mode. I've done MMA professional, highly trained in military things, in tactical situations, and I normally would detect or have a sense of my surroundings if someone was watching me, but I didn't when I saw this Bigfoot. Maybe because I was in the truck, relaxed in my comfort zone. So I told myself, there's no way I just saw what I saw. The Bigfoot is not as tall as I've been hearing some stories, but very muscular and hairy, like an orange-red type of color to it. It moved so fast I couldn't get a clear, detailed description. I did not see the face of this thing, because it seemed like he didn't know that I was there, and it so happened to run into me. This is my assumptions from the way he moved and turned right back around and went back into the bushes, if he even came from there. Now this is a scary thing about this. There's no way this Bigfoot can hide in those bushes and not be seen while hiding because the bushes are not big enough. I did not take my eyes off that bush, only when I grabbed my gun from my hip, that is. I said to myself, what exactly is this going to do to this big thing if this big creature decides to attack me? So when I was done with my 30 minutes lunch break, I drove slowly up to that bush, assuming that Bigfoot was still there hiding, and it wasn't there. For months later, I witnessed this Bigfoot, and for months after witnessing this Bigfoot, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I even believed I was seeing things. I started to do some research on Bigfoots. I came across that they have access to portals, which explains why they disappear and reappear out of nowhere. Even hikers run into these portals and land hundreds or thousands of miles away from where they were in a matter of seconds. Even authorities can't even explain this, but I know exactly on what I saw. Another story I witnessed two other things as well while driving, but that's for another time. But I believe people when they say they encounter these creatures now. Ever since I witnessed them myself. Jesse. Oh, wait, no. Daniel. My bad. Daniel's got some really interesting stories there. Truckers are seeing some interesting things when they're going around the U.S. And I love those guys. Wish I heard more from truckers because I know they're the ones seeing stuff. Like Mike Casey. Cool dude. Do I believe that there's a place in Massachusetts up in the hill country, the mountains, where people are seeing Bigfoot? Absolutely. Now, when I lived out there about 20 years ago, I lived in Western Mass. There's a saying that there be dragons out there. That's how wild it is. And I didn't even live in the crazy part of the hill country. So if people that are listening know more about this area in Massachusetts where supposedly there's Bigfoot warning signs and people have seen them all over the place, and you know about this bar, I would love to hear more from you. And you can do the Share Your Bigfoot Encounter report on the website, BigfootSocietyPodcast.com. As for portals, I'm not sure. Again, this is a creature where we don't have all the info yet. Now, I myself personally, I think we're looking at a undiscovered great ape creature. Animals can do a lot of weird stuff. And do we know everything about our universe, about our world yet? No. So I'm not going to go either way. And I know some of you are going to call me out for it. And that's fine. Bring it on. All right. Last but not least, Jesse. Summer of 2000. When I was 14, me and my friend were dirt biking at a local motocross track by a house in Hungry Horse, Montana. It's located just below the dam, and in that area, there's a lot of trails to ride on. My friend's bike broke down at the track, so he jumped on the back of my bike and we headed back for the house. We took the dam road because it was the quickest way back. Now, there's 2 long straight stretches on the road, and I rounded the bend going fast to the second stretch of road. I'm looking out a ways in front of me, and at the end of the straightaway, probably a third to a half mile, I see what I thought at first was a person wearing an all dark clothes walk out of the ditch. Weirdly looking at us, rotating most of their body, and walking off the other side and disappearing. At the end of that straightaway is a 35-mile-an-hour speed sign, and when it walked out originally, I saw it was taller than the sign, and it was beyond it from me. I didn't think much about the height as we were riding back to the house, and I just thought it was some weirdo out walking in the woods on the trails or something like that. So we grabbed the truck and we drive back. When I'm getting to that straightaway where I saw the person, I realized the speed limit sign is about as tall as the cab of my truck, which is stock 83 F-150, and which would have made that person at least 7 foot. At the time I was 14, I heard of Bigfoot, but it wasn't really on my radar of interest. That day, though, it all changed. That is in no way a person. I watched shows on History and Discovery after that, and I'm sure I saw Bigfoot. I only told a few people about my experience because it's always something people give you a hard time about unless you find others that have a passion for Bigfoot also. I enjoy your podcast and look forward to the next one. Jesse from Montana. So that's exactly why I do these things, because people out there have things that they've seen and they don't trust people to share it. They're going to get made fun of. They're going to get... it could seriously affect their lives, which is why I have the Bigfoot Society podcast, so I can talk to people and they have a way to share their encounters to get it off their chest if they need to anonymously. There's a few ways to reach out to me. And Jesse and everyone else I read tonight, I do want to say thank you so much for sharing your encounters, your stories. It helps the people that are listening to this be able to share what they've seen as well. If you want to share yours, you can go to BigfootSocietyPodcast.com. And the Share Your Bigfoot Encounter form is a little lower on the screen. Put in the encounter with lots of details, and if you want your name shared anonymously, or if you want a fake name in there, whatever you want. Again, thank you for listening. And if you want, you can also reach out to me, BigfootSociety@gmail.com. And there you can share photos, videos,